Hi, Bart.
Morning, y'all.
What's the mug?
This is my friend Mary's Goofy mug.
Okay. So,
I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee, so
okay. So,
not at home.
why, pray tell, were you in Nashville?
Uh, Casey Musgraves dropped an album on Friday. I got to see her at the Ryman Friday night and met her
Oh,
on Saturday at a signing event. So that's why I'm in
oh,
Nashville.
well. So how was Casey Musgrave? Was
She's
she
great, actually. She was
okay?
very good.
Just check. Well, I mean, just checking in the sense of when you got the meet and greet. What was it
She
like?
was she was nice. Actually, she was really nice. She actually talked to us. Granted, we were one of the first 100 people, so she probably wasn't going to do that for the rest of the day. But very nice. You could tell she was very tired. She did Good Morning America Friday morning, which, as you know, John, that means you're up early to get hair, makeup, and everything else done. So she did that Friday morning in New York City, then flew down to Nashville to perform at the Ryman Friday night. And so yeah, she was very pleasant but very tired on Saturday.
Well, just glad that you all had a good meet and greet and
Yes,
had a fun weekend. As always, thanks
yes,
for coming on with us. 10 o'clock
of course.
10 o'clock Eastern on Mondays. A lot of folks have already posted their thoughts in the reffing down here part of the planet, and they want to know why Robin Jansen's horse collar tackle was not a red card on Shonda Silva. It was
Um,
it was a yellow.
because the referee didn't want to give that, which is weird because this was a red card heavy weekend
Yeah,
in MLS.
yeah.
So I don't necessarily. I don't want to defend the referee too much because I think he did not have a great game in terms of just managing everything.
Yeah, CCA
He
had a
was
rough one. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think that one was the one. I don't think that is red card necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. It was also one of those times where, as a referee, you have to understand the situation
Yeah.
that they're in, and he's obviously frustrated because John De Silva has taken the ball, run away from him. Um, that said, uh, I'm surprised he didn't get a second yellow card um, in that moment
Yeah.
because the referee pulled out the yellow card. He almost did do a little bit of the blackjack dealer because he pulled out the yellow card immediately, and holy cow, it was a little bit crazy in that moment. But I think a yellow card is perfectly fine for what happened for Janssen there. Um, I'm just surprised at the reaction that it was so just like I don't know why he was so angry about throwing another human to the ground and getting in trouble for it.
You threw another human into the ground,
Yeah.
sir. You're not allowed to be upset.
So, and it's also funny because this is something that Orlando does all the time if they have a lead, right?
That's
They
true.
have a little bit of Philly in them where they like to whine, complain, moan, and a B word that I'm not going to say right now to you know waste time to do all this stuff. But as soon as they're behind and they have to start trying to make a comeback, holy cow! Any inconvenience is like I mean, this is Orlando's DNA
Yeah.
is to whine and complain over the slightest inconvenience in a soccer game ever. We know this with this club. They're not mentally strong. They're kind of, they have an inferiority complex, and we know that it plays out on the field. Um, and I'm surprised that there weren't other issues that were met with cautions, if not more.
Yeah. Jarrett for Bart, go for it.
Yeah, let's talk about not, I guess, just this game for now. We can expand it out to the rest of the league. But how tough is it getting thrown into a rivalry game when you are the man in the middle or woman in the middle,
Yep.
and it's going to be chippy? How do you find that line to control the game, but not necessarily control
Yeah.
it with cards, so you don't like box yourself in the 30th minute where you're like having to throw cards to control it?
Well, first off, I would tell any referee that it's okay to use cards in games like this because if that you have to have just a level in your mind set. Does that make sense? You have to have this level, this threshold of okay, we'll allow some things, we'll talk to some players, but if you do this, that is a yellow card. Because usually for me, my standard is a level of a hard foul. We can have a conversation of, well, we need to chill. Once it happens once or twice, then maybe we need a yellow card. Because one of the things we always talk about of It's not always a yellow card to the player. It's one of those things where we say the player might need a yellow card, the game might need a yellow card.
Mm-hmm.
And so having those standards set before you go into the game, but also some of the standards of trash talk and extracurriculars, right? How much are you going to allow? Because we know that these two teams don't like each other. We know that these two clubs have history. So you don't want to police everything, but you do need to make sure that you're keeping things cool and that pressure cooker somewhat in control.
When it comes to the dealing out of the cards, I think there are a lot of times where folks may not necessarily understand what is attached to persistent infringement, where it might be a particular player's first foul, but if
Yes.
it's along the same lines as other similar fouls by teammates, then
Yes.
the last guy in the assembly line ends up getting the card. And a lot of folks don't understand that is because of a long line of issues that led up to a point instead of, well, wait a second, that was his first foul. But that was also the fourth or fifth time that the same foul has occurred. That happened as well this weekend.
Well, newsflash, you can get a yellow card for your first foul. It's possible. There are a lot of reasons, and you just described one, John, because, well, first off, I would argue that it's highly unlikely that a player has started the match. That was their first foul if we're giving persistent infringement to an entire team.
Yeah.
Because you're right, that is one of those persistent infringement kind of qualifications of a player has persistently infringed the laws of the game. A team has done it too much. And specifically, a lot of times what you should see, and MLS needs to work on this, is when a certain opponent player gets fouled a lot. They should A, call the fouls, and B, kind of keep track of how many times Thiago Almada's been kicked from behind or that Gigi has been thrown to the ground with a bear hug, and caution the opponent for that as well. So that's one of those other persistent infringements. But you're right, like you can, and I think this is one of those things that specifically in MLS, these, replacement referees have to be aware of is tactical fouling at the professional level looks a lot different than it does at a collegiate level. You may think of a tactical foul as just, they're running behind me, let me grab the jersey. But I think we talked about this last week with Kyle Walker. He had a couple fouls at midfield. Those are the types of professional fouls we're talking about, where he knows that his job here is to make sure the player doesn't get past him. It's not in a super dangerous position necessarily, right? But it's still in a position where he knows that he can't get beat. And so he's either winning the ball or the player's going to the hospital. There's no in between. And I think that's something that these replacement refs need to kind of understand is those. There's also that middle of just like, a little kick from behind a couple times. You may think, let it play. Those types of things are a professional's way of getting an advantage on the other team in a kind of, illegal way.
Kind of illegal.
I don't want to say illegal, but, it's one of those things where it's just like those little things add up. So, yeah.
Why? Yes, they do. Jarrett for Bart, go for it.
And as far as we did talk about the rest of the league, was it just a full moon? Did I miss something? All the red cards?
Well,
it was just a really
I don't know. Like I'm with you, Jarrett, and I watched a lot of the red cards back, and I will defend a little bit the replacement refs. A lot of these red cards were pretty apparent. they weren't exactly like, wow, they missed that, and the referees even saw the thing on the field. I think this is a theme we're seeing with the replacement refs, and there's a lot of VAR overturning or reversing or whatever, escalating in the case of this weekend. But I think the referees were even trying to allow these players to stay on. But when you see a Keaton Parks where he just stomps on the foot of someone, I'm trying to think. The Red Bulls one where you get 2 yellow cards for stupid fouls, and honestly, the second foul could have almost been a red card in its own right. Those aren't referee issues. Now, I will say, I think you look at that and say, okay, there were 6 red cards given on Saturday alone. Only one of those was a double yellow card. What was the referee doing throughout the rest of the game to manage the tone, manage the temperature, and manage the way players were going into tackles? So that is something that I think people forget, that the pro referees, the PSRA referees who work for pro specifically, they're trained as professional referees to kind of understand that. Now we argue with them a lot, and that's fine. But you can see the difference in quality of game management between the two referees because 6 red cards in a day is a lot.
All right, so then let's go rapid fire on these reds. Chicago, Montreal, you end up with a red by Raheem Edwards in the 82nd minute of a crazy match that had the Kellen Acosta draw that would have made a PGA golfer jealous to wrap things up.
Which, by the way, apparently on Twitter shows how terrible the league is because, all goalkeepers should be accurately accounting for Chicago wind because that's something that every sports professional has ever had to deal with.
Well, did you know that this has never happened in another league in the entire world? Never.
No, never has another league had to deal with it. And certainly not even in a professional sports league in the United States has wind ever been a problem with players catching the ball.
Never has,
especially not in Chicago.
Never has Tim Howard, while playing in the Prem, scored a goal because he hit a ball into basically into like a wind temple from Avatar.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So Raheem Edwards, Montreal, red, yes or no?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So that was the first match of the day, and it had a red. Next match of the day, Miami and DC, and in that one, Pedro Santos gets a red for DC down 2 goals in the 90th minute. Yes or no?
I think it's like, I think we're going to find this. I think you can see that all these could be red cards. Yes.
Okay. Seattle and Colorado, Josh Atencio gets a red in the 57th minute.
I think so. Mm-hmm. I need to go back and watch this fully, like in the game.
Yeah.
I just watched the highlights because I want to see what all led up to it.
Okay.
Because it was a weird one where he got a yellow card and then a red card. It wasn't a double yellow card.
Okay.
So I want to see that. I need to watch that fully because that was weird.
Okay. Edelman at 90+6 for Red Bulls against Columbus.
Yes. That was his double yellow card, and both yellow cards were legit.
Then the Keaton Parks red, NYC and Toronto. NYC would eventually win, but Keaton Parks' red card happened 3 minutes after the O'Toole goal that gave them the 2-1 lead.
I struggled with this one because I think I understand why. I think the referee probably didn't see a great look of it live because it was a little bit off the ball, a little behind the play, I should say, maybe not off the ball. But he saw it and was like, oh, I need to address that, and gave him a yellow card, came back and get the red card. It's one of those where, like, you can't just stomp on a player's foot and expect to walk away unscathed.
You can't stomp on a player's foot and expect not to get out unscathed.
Yeah.
The first 5 matches on the board for Major League Soccer on Saturday had red cards in them. And I mean, it could be just the way that the schedule was laid out on the grid on the page, but literally the first 5 matches of the day had red cards. I don't think I've ever seen a situation like that where you end up with a red. LA in the craziness, late night and MLS After Dark, Cáceres at 90+9, while LA is trying to hang on to a point.
Yeah. Again, probably, like, you see why this is a red card, if that makes sense. It's hard for me to just say, definitively either any of these were not red cards. And I think some of them are very clear red cards, and I understand why they weren't given red cards immediately. And had to go to VAR because I think a couple of them had a VAR review, which again is one of those things where a newer referee in this league, slightly inexperienced, is not looking to give red cards all the time, right?
Yeah.
But one of these things you have to look for is, okay, well, this does rise to the level of serious foul play or violent conduct. Most of these were serious foul play.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to rock the boat because you're the new kid in school, but sometimes you've got to rock the boat because you're the new kid in school.
Right.
One other incident before we slide into the national team activity, since we haven't had the chance to talk about the national team roster and then the 2 subs that have been brought in because of injuries, getting ready for action at the tail end of the week, and then we'll have 2 other matches to talk about this time next week, or actually one
hopefully lifting a trophy.
Right. One leading into another. Okay. All right. So the last one that I wanted to get into with VAR down here seemingly was the longest VAR check in the history of VAR checks in all of mankind. and I'm not kidding. I swear to God, I was watching the end of West Ham and Aston Villa, and Jared Gillett, the man in the middle, determined after more than 5 minutes that Tomas Suchek committed a deliberate handball in a ruling that could have swung the match one way or the other. That was 1-1. You think you score late, you go to a 5-minute review. West Ham's winners wiped off the board, and it's just shared result at London Stadium.
I got to be honest, I wasn't sure why this took so long to be like, it's one of those things where it's not you maybe wouldn't call this a handball in live play because it does kind of hit. I could see letting this go in live play. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what part of the review also is making sure, as we know, there's a boundary of what is the playable part of the body and then the arm, right? We kind of look at it as the bottom of the armpit. So part of the review was, I think, making sure you identified that, yes, it struck part of his arm. And then identifying, okay, was this part of that playable part of the body or part of the arm that we don't allow? But I still don't understand why it took so long to get to, because to me, it's very clearly if it's a handball, it led to directly led to a goal. So we don't have a goal, right? That's part of the laws of the game. If you have a handball, either deliberate or not, that directly leads to a goal, we're not allowing that necessarily. So I think I don't know why it took so long to determine if it hit the playable part of the body or not. And that was the concern for me, is why we were so indecisive on that. And this is, again, John, one of those things where, there's a lot of processes that goes through and the check mark boxes you have to go through. But this one was pretty cut and dry of like, we're looking for a handball. And the fact that it took so long to determine that is, I would say that the West Ham faithful, this was West Ham who scored it, yeah. Deserve to be a little aggrieved that it took so long to take their goal away. But I think ultimately it was the right call. I agree that it took too long to figure out, was this really, was this an infringement or not?
Yep.
And at that point, maybe you just don't have it. Like maybe you say, okay, the call on the field's good.
Okay.
But there were like 3 of those in that game, John.
Yeah, there were.
So I was like, we're all pros at this point. What are we looking at?
Yep. One incident, Leon Bailey checks onto his left foot, attempts a cross, ball strikes Emerson's pointing hand. Center ref waves away the protests instantly. Number 2, shortly before the half, Mikel Antonio, he thought that he wheels away. This is how it's phrased by our friends at the Telegraph. Wheeled away to celebrate bundling in Jared Bowen's in-swinging corner. So Mikel Antonio thought he had a goal on the board with it being at 1-1. VAR, though, adjudged he had handled in the process. And then we had the incident, the third incident. 5 minutes, 37 seconds was how long it took for that to eventually get the call correct. But you probably could have looked at it in far less than 5:37 and come up with the correct.
Also, for Mikel Antonio's goal, I was shocked that it wasn't given for obstruction, because, that was clear boxing out the goalkeeper. And those are the yes, he's within a playable space of the ball, but the goalkeeper also, he didn't have control of the ball by the time he was boxing them out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that was allowed to stand even for that. But anyway, the handball was called, so it's all good.
All right. CONCACAF Nations League Final 4 coming up. Josh Sargent, Luca De La Torre injured, out. Haji Wright is in as a part of the discussion. Brendan Aronson is in. They were added to the roster for the Nations League Final 4.
So I think this is actually a really good roster. I know there are probably some people in this chat who are going to scream that Brendan Vasquez has been just summarily dismissed and insulted by not being included. You're wrong, and that's fine. Being your boy. This roster made a lot of sense. It also made sense why Brendan Aronson wasn't in the original roster. He hasn't been great for Union. He's clearly in the group. And also something you have to remember is that this roster was only 23 players because of Nations League rules. So in the past, or if this was a friendly roster, I think Haji and Brendan probably would have been called up and you would have had a 25-player camp and, you're fine. both of these replacements made the most sense. Haji has been scoring a bucket of goals a game, it feels like, for Coventry. Coventry's having a good season because of him. And he, like Josh Sargent, also serves a dual purpose of being able to play a little bit on the wing, as does Brendan Aronson. When you look at this roster, the depth on the wing is very clearly an issue. Even with Tillman and Gio, who could do it, that's not their best position. So actually bringing in Brendan, who has played on the wing for this team before, bringing in Haji, who plays a lot on the left side for Coventry, does make sense.
Bit of a piece of breaking news, I guess, is what we would call it. The jerseys are out.
The jerseys are out.
Yes, for the 2024 for the Olympics, and it's kind of bomb pop-ish on the blue.
Very bomb pop-ish.
I like the bomb pop blue. You know me as a sucker for frozen desserts. I like my bomb pops, and so the bomb pop is out. And so you can take a look at it. You have a couple of.
This one's even got the melted drip of it. Like the hot summer day is kind of melting on it. So yeah.
I mean, and so it's looking pretty cool for me. When you look at this Final Four with this roster, Callender, Horvath, Turner, and net, 8 defenders, Dest, Lund, McKenzie, Papa Ream, Chris Richards, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, Joe Scally, midfielders. Tyler Adams, Johnny, Weston McKinney, Eunice Musa, Gio Reyna, who understandably might get more minutes playing for the national team in these 2 matches instead of all the minutes that he has accrued at Nottingham Forest. And then 6 up top, it is now Brendan Aronson, Balogun, Tillman, Pepe, Pulisic, Haji Wright, and Tim Weah. As we are steaming into the semifinals here in the CONCACAF Nations League, you got Jamaica Thursday in Arlington, Panama and Mexico meeting in the other semifinal for a spot on Sunday. Going into this matchup with Jamaica, what are you staring at here? As now you've brought in 2 new dudes who are on heaters, as they say in poker. When you look at this roster going up against Jamaica, what do you see?
Well, first off, I think the whole team was on a heater. Pulisic scored in 4 games straight from Milan. Our Pepe gets the game winner for PSV late on the weekend. Balogun's finally scoring goals on occasion. Obviously we talked about Haji and a lot of other players. I mean, Weston's having a fantastic year for Juve right now. I think the expectation is you win. That's it. You've won it twice. I think you're finally seeing probably the most talented roster we could get. Mm-hmm. And that's even with the fact that you had some injuries that you replaced with equally talented players. And that's where the U.S. is at right now. As I said, there's a little bit of winger depth issues. However, you still have Tim Weah and Christian Pulisic. You still have Christian Pulisic is the best winger in CONCACAF right now. Sorry, don't want to debate anyone on that. This is true. He's performing the best for his club, and he still dominates when he comes to the Nations League, especially. And you've got all these players playing very well with their club. The question is for this U.S. team is who's going to be the guy who, if we are feeling a little pressed by Jamaica, if we're feeling like, we need a goal, things aren't quite going our way, who's going to be the guy that personally takes it on his shoulders and gets it done? It could be Pulisic. We've seen him try to do that before. It doesn't always work out. Maybe it's Wes, who, again, been great for Juve and has just been, mercurial at times. And that's my question, is just who's taking that. Now, that said, as I always tell people, never trust the Jamaicans. And they are trying to pitch themselves. I mean, their coach is talking smack. And it's like, we need to humble them again. And that's kind of what, if you're the U.S., you have to understand that you are. I know I love the idea of having your chip on your shoulder, but you have to transition to understanding how good you are in relation to the rest of the teams in this region and go out and prove it. It's a little bit like, UGA under Kirby Smart going from, oh, woe is us, we can't recruit, some whatever bull crap they were selling to themselves. And going from that to we're the big dogs, we're the leaders of this conference. Now, granted, Kirby still tries to make up lies, like someone said they were going to go 7-5, but you have to have the mentality that you're the dominant force. Go prove it. And that's going to be key for this team this weekend.
Only 2 players from Major League Soccer, Drake Callender and Miles. You reading anything to that?
Yeah, that our good players are not playing in Major League Soccer. I mean, who else would have been called in? I think Drake Callender is lucky to even be called in, to be quite honest. I don't think he's had. I think he's great. No, he's not great. I think he is benefiting from playing with Messi. Miami's still not great defensively last year, and he let up a lot of goals. It's not always his fault, but I don't think that there was anything. I don't think there was a keeper abroad necessarily you would bring in, especially because you had the U23 roster come out as well, and that's where Gaga is. And he doesn't play for us anymore, so I don't have to always defend him. But Miles was a little lucky, to be honest, to get called up into this camp when you have other players playing at high levels. I don't think I have defended Miles against the Austin Trusty truthers who pretend like Austin Trusty suddenly playing for Sheffield makes him the greatest player in our pool when Sheffield is a bad team with a bad defense and Austin Trusty gets exposed on the reg. But that it's a fair question of, okay, well, Austin Trusty playing in the Premier League and also had a pretty good season last year with Birmingham City. Miles, who honestly wasn't great for Atlanta last year. We also understand that was a little bit because of his recovery from the Achilles injury, but hasn't been great for Atlanta for a while. So that's a good question. Obviously, you had CCV basically kind of injured. I think not fit enough to make this trip. If CCV's in the mix, does Miles get called in? Who knows? But I mean, it's just a matter of our good players are in Europe, and that's a good thing. We need to develop players in MLS, get them to Europe at a time that fits for them and at a club that fits for them. Not Patrick Schulte going to Arsenal because he had one good year for Columbus.
I was waiting for that one. Cut the promo for me. What do you have going on this week at Soccer for US POD, or are you just lying in wait?
So hopefully tomorrow we'll be recording our kind of roster reaction plus Nations League preview. And then next week we'll record about the Nations League. Hopefully we're talking about lifting a third CONCACAF Nations League trophy and going 3-for-3 in this. I feel like at this point CONCACAF made this competition just for us to win because I mean we're doing it all the time.
Hey, so what are you up to on Friday? What are you
Good
up to?
Question, John. I don't know.
I was going to say. All right.
Working.
Well, okay.
Maybe I'll be here on Friday morning to talk to you about, again, hopefully a victory over Jamaica.
Let me know what you're up to in the 10 o'clock hour on Friday, and we'll figure it out unless you need to bet.
Send me the link and I might drop in. Who knows?
There you go. I will. All right. Soccer for US POD at Bartimus Prime 19. Bart, thanks for hanging out.
Y'all be good. Enjoy the win yesterday. It's always good to beat Orlando.